going to start with a statistic. And I'll give you a lot of statistics throughout this day. Remember that I'm a professor, so I feel the necessity to overload you with details. Can we pull this back just slightly? Okay, yeah. All right, that's great. So, there is a clear gender difference. Men negotiate for themselves, not bargaining in the market for a cabbage, but negotiating for their own futures, for their own salaries and so forth, 8 to 9 times more often than women. Where do I get this statistic? And before I even tell you that, I'm going to give you an apology. Most of the statistics I give you are going to be from the US. Not all, but most. The reason for that is not because I have a preference for American statistics. It's because that's where they're doing the research. And to try and get research from other places is very difficult right now. Nevertheless, we're going to start with this. There was a professor named Linda Babcock. She was teaching in the MBA program at Carnegie Mellon University in the United States, a top MBA program. And she discovered back in the year 2000 that her male recent graduates were earning on average 7.6% more than the women. Her natural instinct was to say that they were being offered more, that it was pure discrimination. I think it was about a $4,000 difference. But when she started doing research into it, she found out that far more often, that was not the case. What made the big difference was that 57% of those men had negotiated those opening salaries up, whereas only 7% of the women had done it. So we're looking at an 8 times difference. And that 8 times difference accounted for 7.5 of that 7.6%. So all but 0.1% was because the men asked for more. The women, we women, were just grateful someone who was willing to hire us. Right? Oh, thank you so very much. Yes, I will work like a slave for you. Another more recent study, this one from this year, showed that women professionals, this is by a company called Hired. They're an online employment website. They looked into 100,000 job transactions in technical, marketing, and sales nationwide last year in 2015, and found that the expectations of the women, on average, were $14,000 less than the expectations of the exact equivalent men looking for the exact same jobs. Now let me make that even worse. What they found is that it increases the more senior a woman becomes. The gap increases. Now we could see this as something really positive. Maybe young women are not discounting themselves in the same way that older women do. Because I've been doing this for a couple of decades now, I have a slightly more unfortunate spin on it. And that is that experience leads women to start discounting themselves more and more over time. We go in with a lot of confidence and it gets chipped away over time. Of course, when I look at statistics, I'm looking at salaries because they're really easy. Numerically, we can look at them and that it makes a very vivid picture. But what I'm talking about is not just about salaries. Women make up only 5% of the CEO positions in Malaysia. That's the same number as they make up of Fortune 500 companies in America. Less than 20%, as journalist Mary Chin has just pointed out to me, less than 20% of the women in the U.S. Congress of the people in the U.S. Congress are women. Only 1/3 of our ambassadors are women, the exact same number as 10 years ago when the U.S. Association for Diplomatic Studies raised the alarm on this problem, noting as well that the major diplomatic posts are overwhelmingly held by men. And I will tell you, the U.S. ambassadorships right now, with the exception of Japan, that all key ambassadorships are held by men, whereas women really rock in Oceania. I think we have Timor-Leste, Marshall Islands, you know, all the big countries. I will also tell you that my husband specifically asked me to leave out that part. He should know better than that. All right, so what is silencing us? I'm going to look at 7 blockers, most of which, not all, but most of which are misperceptions, and all of which I believe are surmountable. So here we go. We're going to start, whoops, with leaves. Okay. We're going to start with fear of conflict. Women are about 2.5 times more likely than men to say that they fear conflict in a negotiation or in speaking their minds, for example, when they disagree with someone. I'll give you an example. In a study done at the University of Michigan, students were asked if they would come in and play this little game, and then afterwards they would be paid between $3 and $10. So they came in to play the game, and then the actual experiment was that they then offer to pay that person $3. Men ask for more 9 times more often than women. So the experimenters followed the women, and the women were willing to complain. They were willing to say, not even verbally complain, it was like they were given their $3 and they'd kind of go, ah, or they go, but they wouldn't ask for more. So the experimenters followed them and said, could you tell me why you didn't ask for more? And the overwhelmingly most common answer was, I didn't want to get into an argument. I didn't want to get into a fight. Why would we see simply asking for more information to be a cause for an argument or a fight? Yeah, you wouldn't say, hey, you lousy bums, you said you'd pay me up to $10. Why are you offering me $3? Yes, you'll probably get in an argument if you do that. But if you just say, so you guys said it was between $3 and $10. Can you help me to understand why I got $3 and others got $10? What is the difference? How do you get $10? Why would that cause an argument? And yet, because of our fear of conflict, we don't even speak. So that's the first. The second, which is tied to the first, is fear of failure. In a 2013 study by jobs.com, 36% of those who don't negotiate cited their reason, the fear of failure or a lack of confidence as the reason. This was by far the biggest category. This fear is often stoked by well-meaning people around us who want to protect us from hurt, by warning us not to aim too high or because we might fail. I do not think for 1 minute that men on the whole set out to harm women, or our parents set out to harm little girls. But we do it without thinking about it, because we worry about them, because we care about them. So the parent will say, oh honey, don't try to climb that tree, you might fall. And the message becomes ultimately, I cannot do it. When I went off to start my business in Singapore, my husband was very, thank you. My husband was actually said to me, why don't we just leave it over there? My husband said to me, but most likely you'll fail. No, actually he was just stating a statistic. Most new businesses fail. And he was not saying it because he didn't believe in me. He was saying it because he loves me, because he was concerned about me, because he didn't want me to face failure. But if I were a different person, maybe in the end, that would just make me not do something I really cared about, and then I would have failed. And what I said to him is, yeah, chances are likely I will fail. I can live with that. What I can't live with is feeling that I never had the courage to try. I can't live with feeling that a lot of people had belief in me and helped me in my education, and I didn't even have the guts to go anywhere with it. So fail, yeah, I can fail. Could you ask him not to have like telephone conversations and things up here when I'm speaking? Thank you. I'm going to tell you a very personal story now, but it shows what will happen. And this is why what I'm talking about is important, not only for you career women, but for you to raise your children thinking this way. My daughter-in-law is a lovely young woman. Her parents are refugees from Cambodia. They were in the killing fields. They went through some bad stuff. And her dad is a very loving man. And because of the trauma that he went through, he feels it's so necessary to protect his wife and to protect his daughter. And recently, he had a major brain aneurysm and was in the hospital in a coma for a month. We did not think he could survive. His wife, who lived in the United States for 23 years, didn't know how to speak English. She didn't know how to drive a car. She didn't even know how to use the washing machine. Because he had so protected her out of love, he made her incapable. And then when something happened, she could not go on. She had to have other people come in and take care of her. I mean, she's going through a training now, but the problem is because we're afraid something might happen, we ensure it happens. If we're afraid to ask for something we want and we don't do it, as a result, we don't get what we want. We ensure failure. If we don't ask, why is our boss wrong to believe that we are perfectly happy with what we have? If we don't speak up, why are our colleagues wrong to believe that we don't have one good idea in our heads? If we don't question the status quo, how will there ever be change? My own experience, as well as that of hundreds of women I have worked with and trained over the years, proves that we can be very successful. Negotiators, advocates, businesswomen, mothers, wives, if we dare to try. However, there is a negative influence afoot that is frightening a lot of us, and I want to deal with that particularly. We are fighting a media wave right now that is designed to raise our fear level even higher, telling us that if we women dare to negotiate, not only will we fail, we will actively harm our careers. We will end up worse off. Here's a quote from one piece that I took down that was published last year. Quote, "As research has demonstrated time and again, women who ask for more are punished, pretty much no matter what they say or how they ask." Now, fortunately, being a university professor, I can get on the internet and go to the actual sources that this journalist used. And what was the proof? Ultimately, the proof, and this was a woman, by the way, a woman journalist, her proof was an experiment done in 1975, over 40 years ago, when there were, I think, 5 women in Congress. Interestingly, that experiment was not even about negotiation or speaking up. It was about aggression. And they had women speaking such scripted lines as, "Are you stupid or something?" Probably that's not a good negotiating line. It's one that I certainly would avoid in my business. Unfortunately, as psychologist Barry Schwartz said in his 2015 TED Talk, false ideas can create a circumstance that ends up making them true. In other words, a false idea that we will be punished if we try makes it the truth that we're afraid to try. It makes it happen. Thus, in a salary negotiation experiment recently at the University of Texas, Austin, women asked on average for $7,000 less than the men because, as they later reported, they feared a backlash if they appeared too pushy or demanding. Not one man expressed that fear. Asking for what you rightfully deserve or stating what you legitimately believe does not require you to be pushy or demanding or to